Hello, today I'm going to show you how you can use the quadratic equation to solve quadratics. So first, I'm going to write down an example of a quadratic equation, and I'm going to explain to you what this equation means. So here's the equation, and we have pretty much three parts. We have a right here, which is the x squared. We have b, which is the 8x, and then we have c, which is, in this case, 11. And using the quadratic equation, we can actually solve this, and we can get three things. We could get an answer that is imaginary, which means that there's no real solutions. We could have one solution, or we could have two real solutions. So we have this equation, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what the quadratic equation is. So the quadratic equation says that x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2a. So it seems kind of intimidating at first, but it's really not that hard. There's just a few things that we should understand here before we jump into this. So obviously that the 8x is going to be b. So when we're going to plug these numbers in, we're going to look at each of the variables and look back to our main equation so that we can plug them in. So if we take this equation, and I'm going to move it over here so we can get a better look at it and still have room. So we're going to see that x equals negative b. So we're going to take a look at b, and since it's 8x, it's positive 8x, we're going to turn it into a negative 8x. Now, in the equation, say that this 8x in the equation was negative, it would switch and turn into a positive. So this negative sign in front of the b in the quadratic equation is basically telling us that whatever b is, it's going to be like sort of the opposite, where if it's positive, it'll be negative, if it's negative, it'll be positive. But in this case, it's going to be negative 8x. And let me move this down. So x equals negative 8x plus or minus, and then we're going to have the square root of b squared, so we have 8 squared minus 4 times a, and in this case a is just x by itself, so in this case x will equal 1, so that means negative 4 times 1, and then times c, which is 11, and take this, all of this divided by 2 times a, so that's 2 times 1, like this. So that's that. And what we're going to do here is, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. And now we're going to, actually, this x shouldn't be here, sorry. It's just 8. Now we're going to basically, we plugged everything and we're going to simplify it now. So we have x equals negative 8, positive, negative, and the square root of 8 right here is 64, because it's 8 times 8. And then minus 4 times 1 is negative 4. Times 11 is negative 44. Divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. So we have this, and now we're going to simplify it even further. And we're basically going to clear this up. So we have x equals negative 8, positive, negative, the square root of, so let me get this out of here. This is kind of in the way. So 64 minus 44 is 20. So we have 64 minus 44, which is going to end up being 20. And then we have this divided by 2. So now we're going to have to find the square root of 20. So if I get my calculator out, I'm going to take the square root of 20, which is about 4.47213. And I usually like to bring this number out as far as possible, because in the end, if we round this number to the 100th now, the answer won't be as exact as it should be. So it's generally a good idea to put this as far out as you can, and then you can round it down, or round it up or whatever, to the 100ths. when you have the complete answer. So now this means that we have x equals, I don't like that, negative 8 plus or minus 4.47213 divided by 2. So this means we need to have negative 8 plus this number divided by 2 and negative 8 minus this number divided by 2. And this is where we would have two answers. And this is because the ending square root here that we have when it's all simplified and not square rooted yet, is because this is a positive number. Now if this was a negative number, we would immediately know that we have no solution to this equation. And if this number ended up being 0, it means that we have just one solution. But in this case, we're going to have two. So we're going to do negative 8 plus this number. And so we do negative 8 plus 4.47213. And we get negative 3.2787. So we have negative 3.5277. And we're going to divide this number by 2. Okay, and so this means that the first number for x is going to equal 1.76. And it's 1.763935, but I'm just going to round it to 1.76. And the second answer, we're going to have negative 8 minus 4.472, which is going to equal negative 12.47213. So let me do this, 12.47213 divided by 2. And this is going to get us the answer of negative 6.24. So we have that divided by 2, this divided by 2. This is not turning out as a good number. Alright, and if we zoom out here just a little bit, we can see that basically what we did is we took the quadratic equation and we got ourselves an equation here, and we used this to break it down and get ourselves two numbers. Now let's say we were going to have a different type of solution. What we're going to have an equation as is we're going to have 9x squared plus 12x plus 4 equals 0. So again, we have the a is right here, b is here, and this is our c, which is going to be plugged into the quadratic formula equation, So again, we have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2. So we're going to plug these numbers in. So that means we have x equals negative 12, because we had b here, and we decided that it was going to be negative. Negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 144, because that's 12 squared. But we're just going to plug it in for now. Minus 4 times 9 times 4 divided by 2 times 9. And if we simplify this down, that means we get x equals negative 12 plus or minus 144 minus 36, which 36 times 4, negative 36 times 4 is actually negative 144, I believe. So at this moment, you might have noticed that we have 144 minus 144, so that's going to equal 0. And we're going to do 2 times 9, which is 18. So you might be wondering, well, what is this gonna change into? And this basically means that we're going to get one real number as our solution. This 144 minus 144 is 0, and square root of 0 is 0. So basically what we're getting is negative 12 plus or minus 0. And no matter what happens, that's going to be the same, even if we divide it by 18. So basically, it's just negative 12 divided by 18. And if we divide that, it's going to be negative 0.66, repeating over and over and over. So this would be our answer. Well, x equals this. And then there's one last type of equation that I want to go over. The last type of equation I want to go over is an equation that has no real solution. And here is the equation: x squared plus 3x plus 11 equals 0. So again, we follow the quadratic formula, which is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. So we're going to plug these in, and we're going to get 3 plus or minus, well, actually, excuse me, negative 3 plus or minus 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 11 divided by 2 times 1. And this is going to equal negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 minus 44 divided by 2. And you might have noticed here that 9 minus 44 is negative, what, negative 35? I'm pretty sure. Let me just check. Oops. So that means that we have the square root of negative 35. Oops. It's kind of off center. And so basically what this means is that the number here, it cannot be a positive number. So if we just take this regular square root of 35, it's 5.916, and then some more decimals, some more numbers after that. But basically, we can't have any two of the same number that's going to multiply to negative 35. If we did 5.91 times 5.91, it will equal positive 35. And then if we do both negative 5.916 times negative 5.916, that's still going to equal positive 35. So there's really, unless we had one of them positive and one of them negative, we cannot get this as a real solution. So this means that there are no real solutions. In Algebra 2, you do get into the imaginary numbers and things like that and solving these. But for now, that is what the answer is here. Anyway, this is pretty much the quadratic formula. These are the three ways that you can solve, well, these are the three different scenarios you have. But then there's still one more thing that there is, and it's called a discriminant. And this is basically a really easy way to figure out if an equation has two real solutions, one, or even none. So if we take this equation that we just had, we can use the discriminant to solve this. And the discriminant is the square root of b squared minus 4ac. That's all it is. And we can use this to determine what kind of solutions our equation will have. And if you might have noticed this because this is inside of the same square root sort of house thing. And when we were doing those equations, you may have noticed that depending on what was in there, we could determine what kind of solutions we would have. So if we have b squared, it's going to be the square root of 9, and then negative 36, times 4, which is negative 44. I mean, not negative 36. Negative 4 times 11, which is negative 44. And that's obviously going to be another negative number. And we can even prove this further with another equation. Let's say we had x squared equals 5x. The way that we'd solve this one is we'd first want to get 5x onto this side. So we'd subtract 5x from each side, and we get x squared minus 5x. And we need to have a c, so we're just going to add 0. And the way that this would work is we'd have we'd have negative 5 times negative 5, which is 25. Minus 4 times 1 is negative 4, times 0 is 0. So we have basically minus 0. That means we have the square root of 25, which is a positive number. And that means we would have two real solutions.